Hey everyone, welcome to Collect Football Live. Today we are going to talk with Vincent from CardHour. Vincent, how's it going?
Everything's going great. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Had a fun chat before this. We should have probably been recording it, um,
Yeah, I
you
think so.
know,
Yeah.
but we're just kind of talking about the modern market a bit and how there's so many less items available for the premier players compared to basketball, and how many less collectors you need to actually, build the same amount of demand based on the amount of items available. So, you know, it's pretty fun and exciting to think about. Pretty much all soccer. I mean, that obviously just goes back into vintage, even that much more because of the limited supply of cards. But we had a few topics that we were going to talk about, but nothing specific. So I guess the first thing is we'll start with is kind of like what you're focusing on right now. Maybe have you been buying much recently? If so, kind of what have you been looking at?
Um, I've actually not been buying a lot. As I said just before we went live, I've been selling a lot of my basketball products because I was still keeping them from last season. So I was Team Jazz with Donovan Mitchell, and I was not Team Murray with the Nuggets. So I kept my Donovan Mitchells after they got kicked out of the bubble. So I just sold a bunch of my Prism stuff because the market is getting hot right now in the NBA with the preseason and all the hype building around teams. So I have funds again to spend in soccer, which is obviously always great.
Sure.
um, so I'm still buying the 1990 Pro Set boxes with the Alan Shearer rookie, arguably, depending on if you count the Coca-Cola one as his true rookie or not. But I just like opening these. There's 48 packs. They're super easy to like open, and they don't stick together like these Calcio 2001 cards who are just glued together. It always hurts to hear that sound. Like if you put them off each other,
Yeah.
it hurts, especially if it's like a very good one.
Yeah. There goes the surface, right?
Yeah, that's already grading out of the window. um, so I'm still buying those boxes. I still believe that if the Hall of Fame, the Premier League Hall of Fame comes through, which will probably happen, it just got pushed back because of the pandemic, that Alan Shearer is going to be in there. I mean, I don't see a reason why the all-time goal scorer of the competition of the Hall of Fame would not be in the Hall of Fame. So I'm still buying those boxes. I think it's super fun to open, and I just like the look of the Alan Shearer one.
Have you been? So you have been opening the boxes. You're not keeping any of them unopened.
Yeah. So I opened 3 already. I still have 4, and I'm still buying more. So it's probably gonna happen that I just keep some sealed. They were mass produced anyway, so I don't think it's gonna be super hard to come by, even if the hype is building. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna keep some sealed. Why not?
How many shears are you getting? Like typically, like is it one per box or one every other box or?
It depends. So I opened 3, and I have pulled at least 1 in every box I opened. Same goes for Roy Keane and Ian Wright. Depending on if you count Alan Smith as a hit. I mean, he was the top goal scorer of the 1990 season. So if you really value something like that, then obviously you can go for those guys. But I would say Alan Shearer, Roy Keane, and Ian Wright would be the main ones.
Right.
And I have 3 of each from 3 boxes. So,
and that's fantastic because the boxes are costing you very little. Like what?
yeah.
So you talked to me about that a couple of months ago, and I was like, oh my god, that's such a great idea. So I actually bought one locally for like $15 shipped. Like that was
that's
my total cost. So what is it like? What have you been paying for those boxes, like on average, would you say?
It used to be the exact same as you're saying, like $7 for a box, 7.5 shipped, like 15, around 15. It's nowadays very hard to find a box under $20 without shipping. So it's already going up. I'm not sure if it's me or whatever, if just demand goes up and people look at the last eBay comps and just put it higher. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm I'm struggling to find any under 15 without shipping, so it goes up.
Sure. What do you know what the shearers are selling for at the moment?
Depending on the quality, because there's a lot of shearers on there. But if you look at the quality, most of the under $25 ones are just not worth buying. Okay. I probably look at them all, right? Because I was really digging into it, and I probably look at them all, every single one, and either it was like whitening a corner or whatever. It just, there was not one under $25 that I would consider buying, and even $35 that were still damaged. Sure. Probably it's like a PSA 7 or 8 maybe. So yeah, that's why I decided to buy the boxes and pull them myself. I didn't know about the pull rate, so I was like very nervous. Like I'm buying these boxes for cheap, but there must be a reason why the boxes are cheaper than the product itself. Didn't make sense to me. But after opening 3 boxes, and I still pull a shear every box, and they look better than, I would say, 90 to 95% of all the shearers on eBay right now. So I'm super pumped about that.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's probably part of the reason too. I think a lot of people, they go looking for a particular player, and then when they start to see, the pricing, and if the pricing is kind of high, then their next step is to either look to buy a set, to make sure they get the card, or to look at wax or unopened packs or boxes. And so that's probably at least the people who are kind of at least forward thinking are doing that, before it gets too reactionary where the prices have shot up so high. You got me thinking I might have to go grab that box and crack it.
Yeah, it's a super fun product. I mean, you probably know a lot more of these players than me, because you also have Lee Dixon, you have Seaman in there. So you have a couple of very, well, at least for me, well-known players. But I guess the set has like 450 players or something extremely ridiculous. Sure. And I don't know a lot of these players. So for me, it's kind of easy. It's just, if you see a shear, a keen, or a right, that's it. That's enough.
Those are the hits, right? And then everything else, all right, go in this pile.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've been doing. I'm probably missing out on some of them, but I've looked at a lot of prices and a lot of other players, and they're not. I mean, they go for $1.50, and so.
Yeah, and those are the cards you just throw on the side and you let them sit there, and then 3-4 years down the road, you look and see if there's anything that's the demand's gone up. So, or you just get rid of them. It's one of those two things. So
yeah, probably something like that.
So anything else that you've been considering now that you're getting some money coming in? Is there something else other than the 90 Pro set that has at least intrigued you or interested you? And
yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this. I mean, I'm very interested in Prism right now. It's kind of strange to say, because people who have been following me have seen me transitioning from anti-cards to more towards cards, and from anti-Prism more towards Prism now, I guess. But I mean, I'm still learning every single day. I mean, I'm only doing this since March. Sometimes I think people kind of expect me to know everything because I make YouTube videos, and that's obviously not the case. I'm still learning, and I'm still like, I keep messaging people like, who have been like you, like Al, who have been in these situations before, with the Euros, with the World Cup. Like, how was it back then? I don't know. I mean, it's since March. The only thing I've seen is the August boom and return of games in a pandemic. I mean, no, that's basically it. Right. So I've been trying to talk to a bunch of different people, the people that I have on my channel, like you, Al. I've talked to one of the medical staff members of the USA men's national team. I'm trying to like diversify as much as I can to learn more about everything. So yeah, right now with the Prism, I just think a lot of people throw it away. Like they've bought at the peak or close to the peak, everything dropped because it was just going up way too fast. So they lost a bunch of money, and now they were like, yeah, soccer sucks. Soccer is not good to buy. And they just threw everything away. They just are not interested in soccer, or at least in the Prism cards anymore. But I mean, if the only thing that caused the boom was just no sports and there was like the Bundesliga. So imagine an international tournament. I cannot imagine that these cards at least go up like 10%. And even if they go up at 10%, you have cards that were sitting at $3,000 in August that are now selling for $150. So for me, it's like hard to imagine that the 150 doesn't turn into 200 at least. Like if you buy 10 of those, you make an easy 500. So I'm looking more. I mean, it's always dangerous to say easy, of course, but I'm just looking more into Prism stuff. I think there's as soon as people say it's not a good buy, I'm buying that stuff. I mean, it's the golden rule I have in sports betting as well. If 80% of people go one side, I just go the other one, and at a long term hold, I win. Because most people don't have discipline. They don't see past one game. They don't see past like 2 months down the road. The only thing that matters for a lot of people just instant gratification. And that can work for 5 games. That can work for 10 games. But over a period of 100 games, I'm going to be the winner.
Yep, 100%.
I'm looking more into Prism Nart now. So
yeah, I dig that. I think that that's a sound philosophy. I mean, there's just, like you said, I mean, there's a reason it went so high before. I mean, it may have been a ton of hype, right? But
sure.
I mean, it obviously was. But the for it to drop so quickly, you know, that's kind of, you know, what leads us to believe that. But when it did hype up, that was the product. So like, what's gonna be the first thing that goes up when there's another, you know, push and demand, and it's going to be that. And because people already have a history of seeing it be successful. So yeah, I agree. That's the obvious first choice for people. I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, which ones are people going to go after? Are they going after, you know, the 2014? Are they going after, you know, like Mbappe, the 2018? But are they going to do the same for future years? Is it specific years of Prism for specific players? You know, that's I think going to be the challenge. Like, you know, I think like, you know, the 2018 Rashford, like, because that's his first one or something like that. But you know, I don't necessarily know that like a 2020 like Lewandowski is going to, you know, have much pull personally, or at least enough to like buy that over maybe an earlier sticker or card of his, I guess. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think Prism's just going to be the king of everything?
I think it's different in the soccer card market because a lot of people are already into stickers. It's just the new guys that came in and didn't only knew Prism, that Prism caught fire like it did. So I had this conversation yesterday on my podcast I do with Troy, and we were talking about Prism as well. And he said something I don't know why I just don't caught up to it earlier. Like, what are you comfortable with paying for a product? And that's basically what it comes down to. If you feel comfortable, if you can sleep at night knowing you spend $150 on a card that was $3,000 2 months ago because of the Prism boom, and it used to be $5, can you sleep at night if that 150 goes to 100 and doesn't become 3,000 anymore? Like, I think it has a higher chance to go to 300 in the boom than go back to 100 in the boom. So if you're comfortable laying that 150 from a decent player, obviously you need to understand what player
Right.
you're buying. I mean, you're not gonna buy a defender from Poland in the World Cup. I mean, that's not what you're doing. But if you're talking about attacking players, if you're talking about favorites to win a big tournament, players from England, Belgium, Brazil, even Argentina,
Yeah.
even though they haven't won anything, but I mean, there's always a conversation about Messi. So
Sure.
if you know what players to buy, and you feel comfortable laying the money, why not?
Yeah, I dig that. So how about further back?
What's up, Brett? I was in a private chat. I just turned on the comments. Sorry, guys, I didn't really see it about 10 minutes ago. What's up, Brad? What's up, Alb?
Oh, that's
Trading
funny.
sealed pro set boxes of PS8 prisms.
DM if interested. I actually just saw that as well. I have something blocking my view of that part of the screen because.
Right.
Hey Al, what's up, brother? Thank you for joining us in Australia. Yeah, that's interesting. That's something that's definitely thought provoking. And it shows us, like especially those top players. Those are the ones that you have expectations. Like you said, don't be doing the like a fullback for Poland. I mean, that was where the boom was just ridiculous. I mean, people were spending up on every single player. So you just got to kind of focus it. Don't just like shotgun it and buy everything. Just be more aware of what's driving the market and that sort of thing. But how about anything earlier? Is you pretty much like that 90 and later? Is that kind of where your focus of what you've been looking to add is?
Yeah, I've not been going much deeper into vintage lately.
Mm-hmm.
I've been just focusing on making YouTube videos, to be honest, and
Sure.
trying to figure out more about the prism. I also been like adding stuff to my website and trying to already start doing some research about the Euros, even though it's still a long way. It's still 6 months or like 6.5.
Yeah.
We don't know if there are gonna be any fans. We don't know what's gonna happen exactly. Because I don't think there's right now teams can have 23 players. I think that's going to increase because most of these teams in the domestic leagues already complaining that the schedule is too hard. So I can see national teams having like 26 players, even 28 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So that already changes the whole dynamic. Like I can do research about different players who I think they're not going to be in there, and all of a sudden the rules change and they are actually in there. So it's still early on, but I am already looking at a movement in bookmakers' numbers because that always says a lot too. I'm already making my spreadsheets with players, their first Prism card, their first Euro card, the rookie year. So I'm already digging into it. Stuff like that takes time. So
yeah, for sure. And plus that website, I mean, that's something you shared a link with me about like what you're trying to build. And I mean, I think it's going to be a great resource once you get that thing, lined up. I know you're starting with the more recent stuff and then going to work your way back for the most part. Which makes a lot of sense because that's where most of the traffic's coming from. And so like, yeah, I mean, anybody who listens to this, pay attention to Vincent's website. People can go to it right now, right? I think I've
it's
been
aligned.
to it.
It has some players on it.
Yeah. So scan and see what work he's been putting into it because it's pretty impressive. And he's not just doing this like I am, where I pop on the camera and start talking and then move on. Like Vincent's like putting in some work, and his site looks like it's going to end up being a good place to go to get some information when you're looking for stuff, and at least as one of the good places to go for reference. So yeah,
it takes time to add stuff.
What's that?
It just takes time to add stuff because with the more vintage ones, like I've sent you the list, like the separations. And with from modern vintage on, I want to like include like more detailed, even a story or background of the player, so it makes sense. Most people haven't watched Di Stefano,
Right.
or even know Di Stefano. So I want to like include like stories and more information about the products. And obviously, you know that better than me. It takes time to get good information and validated information, because I bet there's like 10 different sites claiming 10 different things.
Sure.
So and I want to, I mean, if people go to it to have a good resource of information, then the information needs to be correct. So it takes time to make sure I have the good information, that the right information, because for me as well, it's like, it takes time to research those things. I wasn't born back then. I've just, as I keep saying it, I've been in this market since March. So what do I know about vintage cards? You know,
Sure.
I know the players, but the cards, I don't. I have to look it up myself. It's exciting though, because you learn a lot new stuff, and the stories behind it are so much more interesting, I would say, than the players from now.
Sure.
So
it was a different world back then, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes it for me even more important, because I feel like a lot of people can stay in this market if they're interested in the backstories, like in the stories themselves. I would stay in this market just to buy players that have an amazing story.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's the fun players to collect, honestly. Like, because
yeah,
you can hold that card and you look at it and you can recall that story, and there's just more connection to it. It's like,
yeah,
you know, and then you just think about where that card has been, you know, like where it's traveled
yeah.
throughout its lifetime to get into your hands. Like it's just crazy, some of the things like that I have in my house that I look at and I'm just like, how many people touched this, you know, over time, you know, looking at it and admiring it, and you know, now
Like,
it's sitting here in front of me.
let's take a card from 1930. It went through a world war.
Yeah,
Like, where was it put? Where was it? Like,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's super interesting, especially because I mean, not enjoy, but I'm really interested in the World War II part.
right.
So I've been interested in since I was a kid. So for me, like stories that involve like World War, that would be a reason for me just to buy a player, because
Yeah,
he was born during that time, he played during that time, he was involved in that time. That would be a reason for me to buy a card.
yeah. I mean, and that's the collecting part. It might not necessarily be the investing part, but that's a
No, that's
cool.
purely collecting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool collecting thing. But sometimes those stories build it into like an investment, right? Because other people find that interesting, and then all of a sudden, you got a
Yeah.
little bit of a market that people all are interested in that. Like, so randomly, when I was going through some cards from 1922, and I see this play, I'm like researching all the players, and you know, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this guy played for Team USA in the first World Cup, and he's the first British player. You know, he's born in England. And so I'm like, oh, he's actually the first, you know, natural born Englishman to play in the World Cup, but it was for the United States. And, you know, so it's just this cute, cool little story. And, you know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a couple of these. And then I put it into the Discord, and, you know, a couple other people bought them. And, you know, it's just, now there's this little market for this guy that nobody knew who he was, you know, 10 minutes ago. And, yeah, it's just all those little cool stories like that you know, kind of draw you in, I guess. But
Yeah, that's why I keep making these videos about the World Cup, because the last one I did was a 1974 World Cup, and that was actually a player from Haiti. I think it was Jean-Jacques Baptiste or something like that. He was actually the first player ever to be accused of using substance, like illegal substance, in a World
really?
Cup. So I didn't know that, but it was
No?
actually it was against Italy. He was actually the first one to be accused of using illegal substance during a World Cup, and that was during 1974. So
Wow.
stories like that, I didn't know that, but making these videos, I stumbled on stuff like that, and it's super interesting. So
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. You know, just all these randomness, like, you know, who would ever know that, you know, like without looking it up, like unless they lived
yeah,
it, you know, and they remember
yeah,
that news or something. But for us, I mean, it's not like people talk about that. And,
Yeah, and it's a guy from Haiti. I mean,
yeah, it was the last time they were probably in the World Cup.
That probably was the last time.
First
Yeah.
and last, maybe.
Yeah.
Actually, when we're talking, I'm going to look that up. So
it could be the last one.
It has to be. I mean, I can't remember Haiti being.
No, me neither.
Haiti at the World Cup.
It's gonna be funny if it was later as well.
Haiti have appeared in the finals of the World Cup on one occasion, 1974.
There we go.
Huh. Well, there you have it. That was the one, and that alone is probably a cool thing anyway, to get somebody who played, a team that country only played one time, and then he gets that storied accusation of performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what it was. If he just did some coke or something.
That could be.
Which I guess that's also performance enhancing.
Yeah, I would say so. It's also funny because the story of Scotland in the 1974 World Cup reminds me of Portugal in the 2016 Euros. Like, Scotland was the only unbeaten team in the World Cup, but they got out after like 3 draws or something.
Yeah.
And Portugal actually drew like 3 times as well in the Euros 2016, and they got out because of goal difference. They end up winning the whole Euros. Like, Scotland went out, but still it was like,
they went undefeated.
How close can it be? Yeah, they're undefeated and they're still out. Yeah, so how close it was for Portugal to get out or win the whole thing. It's crazy, because then they had penalties against Poland, and then they had needed one goal against Croatia and stuff like that. It was like insane.
Yeah, the whole thing was actually so close. Everything was close, like 1 goal difference anywhere, and they're not in it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So all right,
lucky.
Yeah, it's very fortunate. Yeah, lucky. All right, so let's move on to grading a little bit, talking about that.
Right.
So I don't even know where to go with this, but like, obviously grading is so huge with modern cards, and what's really interesting to me is how much value there is in the cards when they get these high grades, when all of the cards get high grades. You know what I mean? Like, if you send in a Prism, like, if you don't get a 9, that card is destroyed. Like, if you open it out of a pack, it's automatically a 9 at a bare minimum. And it's not like there's a super minute percentage that get 10s, right? Like, I mean, that's a high percentage of cards that get submitted that get 10s from like those acetate cards or those Prism cards that are thicker and all of that. And, it's just interesting that, like, if you sell a raw card or you sell this PSA 10, even though you have a 50% chance, or even let's say a third, a 33% chance of getting a 10, but then the 10 sells for what, 5 times or 10 times the amount of a raw card. Like, it's odd to me, like, how important grading is for the cards. So, like, obviously people are going to keep doing it because people feel comfortable buying those cards, and they like to say that they have such a great grade. But I guess how do you kind of see grading in that regard? Like, are you more apt to buy a raw card and then get it graded, or are you more apt to buy a card that's already graded?
So when I just started, I bought graded cards because I didn't know what to look at. That's why I bought a couple of raw cards. The best example I can give you is my 2019 Obsidian Mbappé that got a 10. I just bought raw. So maybe maybe that was lucky. I don't know. Probably. But I feel like back in March, because the market was just growing. People were not talking about soccer at all. So there was people didn't really have the the intention of putting bad graded cards online. I mean, they just put online what they had, even if it was a PSA 10, because the incentive wasn't there to get it graded. Like grading cards back in January, March was like, why would you do that? And then the market exploded and everyone got their cards graded. So I in the beginning I bought raw cards because I could, and most of them, if my biggest buy was a graded card because it was $100. So I wanted to make sure that whatever $100 was my biggest purchase, I wanted to make sure it got slapped and I was like in good condition. But then moving on, I bought a bunch of raw cards, which obviously you need to know, and that's the thing that people always forget, that you cannot expect every single raw card you buy to turn into a PSA 10. That's not what these base cards are doing on eBay. These base cards are sitting on eBay to get sold, and you can choose. If you think that's a PSA 10, you can send it in for grading, or you can list it up for more. That's base cards. If people still don't understand that game, yeah, I mean, that's
and there's a reason that a lot of those cards are not graded, is because the seller knows that there's something wrong with it. You know, depending on the seller.
Yeah.
You know, some sellers, if it's somebody who you see have a ton of graded cards and then they're selling a raw card, I probably wouldn't buy it from them, because they have all these graded cards, so they're aware that there's a reason they didn't send that card in to get graded. I would be more apt to buy it from somebody who is maybe not as much of a seller, and you see, oh, they don't have any graded cards, they just sell everything raw. And, you know, you have a better chance of getting a hit buying from them than you do from, you know, somebody with 90% of their cards being graded, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I used to sell both graded and raw cards. The reason why I didn't submit these raw cards for grading is because, one, I had no experience grading, and two, for my taste, it took far too long. And for me, being from Belgium, it's not as easy, or it isn't as obvious as sending cards in for grading as for you, for example.
For sure.
So I probably sold a bunch of PSA 10s. Probably. I mean, I just looked at the card. If it was, I always gave my best looking cards to the people that bought it from me, because that was the point, right? Why would you sell bad looking cards to someone? So I probably sold a bunch of PSA 10s, but I don't mind if someone else wants to do all this, the grading stuff. It wasn't for me back then, so I just sold everything. Right now, I understand the game obviously a lot better, and I grade myself now. So I still do sell a lot of my cards I would send in for grading myself, but I'm back at square one. I mean, it takes 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. That's the difference
between like modern cards and vintage. You know, like vintage, there's not gonna be this huge move in the value of a card, you know, in 6, 7, 8 months. Whereas like if somebody goes crazy for the next 3 weeks and scores, you know, 7 goals, then you know that, like, imagine if you had Son, you know, cards, and he's gone crazy to start the season, but you have him all out at PSA, and then he ends up getting injured in January, and then you're just like back to square one with the cards, and you lost that opportunity. So yeah, it's a lot more difficult with the modern cards of players that are still in the game, unless it's like a Messi or somebody like that, where it doesn't really matter. You know, the value is always going to be there.
Again, you need to understand, you need to know the players. My first ever submission was Mbappe, because he always gets hyped because he won the World Cup and he's still very young and he scores a ton of goals, PSG, Neymar, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so perfect. That was my first submission. The second one I did was Mbappe, again Mbappe, but also Messi, Ronaldo, Weston McKennie, Pulisic. I sent those guys in for grading because I don't need them right now. I already knew back then it was going to take a while, and I had no experience. So I was just like, let's see how long it takes.
Yeah.
So they're still at PSA after 85 business days. So
I just sent them in yesterday, so I'll be interested to see how long that takes.
Yeah, 20 days are just, especially now with the USPS being so backlogged in the States, because it's not only PSA that gets behind or BGS, it's also the delivery services. So and it also depends on what service you use. Some, like I use Ship My Cards, and they use another middleman, so it goes from the Ship My Cards to that middleman to the PSA. So you have to add all these days on top of the actual grading service.
And for as
So,
little as I like, as much as I feel like I'm going to be waiting, you're going to be waiting like an additional probably 2 months over what I have to wait. You know?
Yeah. So I have to add another week or 2 weeks for my cards to even go between Ship My Cards and the guy who grades them in total. So it only adds to the waiting time. I was fine with it because I mean I knew what cards I send in, I know what players I send in. I was completely fine with that. But if, as you said, if you have a lot of Sun cards and it goes off, you just want your cards to be back as quickly as possible. Right. And right now with the upgraded fees, it's a killer. I mean, I feel like I'm back up in March. I was buying graded cards for the cost of grading, and we're back at it. I mean, look at a PSA 9 Prism Harry Kane. It goes for $50. If you send in one right now, you have to buy them raw, send them in for grading, and wait 6 months. So we're back at where it started for me. I used to buy these cards for the cost of grading. I've bought that Geert Muller card for $40. I've bought that 1996 Merlin Beckham sticker for $40. So it feels like I'm back in March, which is obviously great because I did a lot of great buys back then because I knew what players to look for.
Yep, and that's the magic for everything, right? Just knowing the right people to look for. And so we you kind of talked about that Mueller and how you had bought that, and I think you at the time there was just the 2 graded ones, the one that your friend had, and then there was a third one, and I just saw another one go up that there's a 4th one that got an 8.
Wow, that's the highest one then.
Yeah. But there's 4 total. Like that's the craziness of it, right? Like that. Like it's just 4 cards total. It's just insane. And so do you think that, I guess for vintage, do you think that like the grading is going to be just as important, or do you think it's even more important for vintage than it is modern, just based on, like you're somebody who deals mostly with more modern cards. Are you more comfortable buying a card that's graded because A, it's real, B, it's a grade, C, kind of the rarity of it by seeing the pop reports? Like, how do you feel about grading? Is it more important to you in vintage than modern?
I would say it's more important in modern than vintage.
Okay.
I would say because of the stories or the attachment you can have with these vintage cards, you don't need a grading company to tell you the value, I feel like that's the argument a lot of these as I would call them established collectors like yourself, like Al,
old collectors.
That's what you said.
That's okay. I'll say it.
All right. You guys don't, be proud of it. You guys don't need a grading company to tell you what grade or how valuable that certain card is. And I would even argue that you guys know better how valuable that card or that sticker is compared to a grading company. So I feel like for vintage, I wouldn't mind buying it ungraded, because the value is whatever you give the value to. Like with modern cards, there's so many out there that you have to get it graded. Unless you're playing the base Prism game and just try to get rid of all your bad looking prisms.
Yeah.
I feel like with vintage stuff, you don't also like fakes. I don't know how many or how easy it is to fake like these high-end vintage cards because they already look so old. I mean, a card from 1930, how are you going to fake a card from 1930? It's like it's probably happening, but the chances of you running into a fake 1930 card, I would say is a lot lower than a 2018 because of the technology.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. That
I could be totally wrong though, but
yeah, I'm not really sure. Like I've never even considered like the process of
faking a card.
faking like a vintage card. Like I think that there's certain cards that you might be able to fake.
Yeah, sure.
But like the printing technology alone is the big thing. Like how are you going to get it to like lay down on the card stock? But the problem is you don't have to make it that incredible. All you got to do is sell it online, and by the time it gets to the buyer, that's the end of it, right? Like,
yeah,
so you don't have to make it look great except for the scan, I guess, and that would be the only concern. But yeah, I agree. Like I don't think people need to be that worried about the fakes in general, but I know some people are, and maybe the grading will help them, at least be comfortable that the card is legit. And
yeah, sure.
So I can see that. Maybe it all depends, I guess, on risk tolerance, right? Like if you're pretty unconcerned about there being a lot of fakes out there, that you'd be more apt to be okay buying a raw card. And if you're a little bit more risk intolerant, then buying a graded card might be the best idea for you. Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Like I have not done a ton of grading. Like every time I do grading, I go to the national excuse me, I go to the national and I drop the cards off there. And that's really the only time I ever get cards graded. And I just pay whatever the fee is and I don't really think about it. So honestly, just until this year, I've never really submitted anything through the mail. And so I submitted a few things to PSA, and I'm like, okay, well the lowest fee is $50 for me to send it in. And I'm like, God, that just seems like a lot of money. Like, better be good cards that I'm sending in,
Yeah.
So I just picked a handful of cards that I felt were better cards, and I get those back. And then I realized that there was this other thing, like if you signed up for their membership, it only cost you $10 a card. I'm like, son of a gun, like, here, take all my money. I just sent a big shipment in, and I like that being just old cards being encased. Like, I mean, that's kind of nice to have, especially at $10 per card instead of $50. So yeah, it's just a matter of, I think I like it more just for the protection of the card. And
yeah, that was I think the main reason for me as well, especially if you look at these multipliers, you're not dealing with, like, if it gets a PSA 10, the value goes from $5 to, like, Mbappe's. I mean, I bought them for $1. A PSA 10 is 300. So just imagine, I have 4 of them. So I would just want to have them slabbed, and then you get them back in an oversized slab. So that's another thing. I mean, I know Al is working with PSA to get that sorted. But I messaged PSA about it, and I still don't have an answer to it. I hope it get resolved, because one of my stickers is the corner is bent inside the slab because it was stuck between the slab itself. So yeah, that's not a PSA 10 anymore, even though it's in the PSA 10 case.
Like, what do they do? Do they replace it? Do they just give you a refund based on what you claim the value? Like, that's just like the one that I got, that 2.5 for my cadet that I submitted. And like, I'm looking at it and I still can't see anything that's wrong with that card. Like, I have no idea like what's gave it that grade, but there has to be something on there that I'm not seeing, or, it's just inconsistency. And but then there's another one, I think that, like, I might see, I'm just curious. It's just, I think there's a lot of things going on where what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They're just not taking care of the cards on their end the way that they ought to. And like, it looked like some of the cards of mine that were put in there were put into like a plastic sleeve as well. And then it kind of pressed together to prevent the cards from bouncing around. So why can't they do that with the stickers? You know what I mean? Like that's especially when they know that there's going to be all that room there. And you just got that back last month, right?
Yeah.
Those cards or the stickers. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's just weird, man. It's hopefully they figure stuff out, because those are the kind of things that they're going to lose people from submitting things. I mean, but at this point they probably really don't care because they're getting so much business.
Yeah, and they just raised the price, and I don't think less people are sending cards in for grading. I just think they're sending more selective, but they're still sending in cards.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, I mean, that's the smart thing for them to do. When you're that busy, you need to be bumping the price up, and that means you're going to make more money. You're going to do less work, and yay, or you can staff. If you need to staff more people, you staff more people. But I mean, it's smart business on their end.
Yeah, and again, I mean, now with the backlog, they're hiring more people, but I mean, how can you expect from a guy that works 2 weeks at PSA to do the same job a guy that's been working there for 25 years does? I mean, that even for that, I would not send in cards for grading right now, knowing that.
Yeah,
and that could be a reason for 10 million people, because you want the best. I feel like with the Mbappe, and I had the same feeling, especially with my 1998 Ronaldo one that got a 4. I mean, I've put that on my Instagram, and a lot of people were like, "Why does he got a 4?" It didn't make sense. So I mean, I'm not claiming I'm a professional grader, but I mean, I can look at a sticker or a card and tell you there is nothing wrong with the surface.
sure.
You just need to hold it to the light.
Yeah,
And
catch
I don't
glare on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that magnifying glass that goes times 40. But I mean, I know there is nothing wrong with the surface. It got a 4. So if I want to send it back in for grading, just to make a point that it will get a higher grade, and then it's like, why do I even have to pay the first time?
Yeah.
Like, if that goes from a 4 to an 8 or even a 6, that's already two difference. That's way too much to pay 20, 50, whatever dollars it is. It's just, if it goes up by 1, I could maybe. But if it goes up by 2 or more, then it's just, why did I have to pay the first time? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's kind of almost like malpractice on their end. Like the first time, if the grade comes back that ridiculously different, something's happening, and like, I don't know if it was you or somebody else when I was talking about my 2.5, and somebody suggested that, population control kind of thing, or
I've been hearing that a lot as well.
Now, I'm not really sure grading it that low is the way to do population control. I can see downgrading it 1 or 2 grades, but I can't see downgrading it that substantial, because that just that's obviously going to bring attention to it, and people are going to look at that so much closer. That 2.5, I'm just going to I'm keeping it for now and just letting it sit there. I'm not cracking it. I'm not resubmitting it. I just want to keep it there to remind me, to pay attention to everything, and make sure what I send in is what I think can get, or at least have my expectations set for what I think the grade should be. And then I think what I'll end up doing is just resubmitting all of the bad grades back, at one time, and see what a big difference it is from, the original grade to the second grade. That might be a fun show, actually, to go over the differences. So,
well, now that you mentioned population control, I mean, it's some kind of how do you call it? Like an impossible scenario to imagine, right? If they have 10 cards of the same player, and they go like, we cannot give him 6 PSA 10s. We can only give him 2. So we're gonna give him 2 PSA 10s and 8 PSA 9s. But I feel I've watched another content creator on YouTube having like 200 cards coming back from PSA, and it was literally like 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 9, 9, 10. So it's like, I mean, if you're really that good at grading and you know how to spot a 10, how big are the chances that you get like 4 5 9s and then a 10, 4 5 9s and a 10? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like how you have no feedback too. That's
Right.
what I like about BGS slabs with the subgrades, because it literally tells you what's wrong with the card.
Yep.
And I've talked about this with Troy again last night. They are already doing it while grading the cards. They give you a 9 because there's something wrong with the corner, with the surface, with the whatever.
Yep.
So why can't they just take a box? Like they have 4 boxes because there's only 4 things to look at.
Right.
He gives you a 9 because the corners aren't that good. Just take corners and send it back as a feedback note. There's something wrong with the corners. They're already doing it because they're looking at the card.
Yep.
So I don't understand why there's not some kind of feedback, even though it's like a little check mark at one of these 4 elements. That's all it takes.
Yep. And like at the national, like if you got something back and you got those subgrades from Beckett, you could actually be like, all right, take a look at this and tell me what's wrong on the corners. And, to like one of the representatives, and they'll take a look at it and they'll be like, they'll be looking through the loop and they'll be like, yeah, you're right. I don't see anything wrong with it. We'll get back in there and, maybe he saw a speck of dust, or maybe, it was something that he saw, but we can't see. Let us recheck it. And, the problem is with these grading companies, you're not going to get that type of service anymore just because they're so busy and they just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to do what we're going to do. And, if you're not happy, tough shit. And we're just going to go about our business because you're still going to submit to us.
Send it back and we'll take a look at it in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Here, you're not going to sell this 2.5 anyway. So here, just send some more money. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it still has a long way to go. But yeah, I mean, the incentive to grade right now is just too big.
Yeah.
It's like the multipliers are insane because there's so much backlog. I'm really curious to see how the prices are holding up and pop reports and all that in like 2 years' time when everything is said and done up with these backlogs.
Yeah. It'd be nice to take some pop reports right now, like write them down of some of these big cards and see what the populations are, and then go back.
I'm doing that.
Are you? Okay, and then go back.
I'm tracking 25 cards and stickers.
How many? Yeah, that's a cool feature to look at, because then at least you can see like how much it's tapering down, or if there's a bunch more getting submitted. And I dig that.
Yeah, I'm doing that for around 25 cards and stickers. Like I have the Ansu Fati Mayor cracks in there, Prism. I have the 1998 World Cup Henry, Zidane, Ronaldo. I have all the Mayor cracks from Messi, Joao Felix, Tops Chrome, Kylian Mbappé stickers. So I have a bit of everything in there. And it's interesting to see how that changes. After I check it every 2 or 3 days. So
especially
sometimes it takes 2 days or 24 hours for the website to update. So I leave room for another day, sometimes even 2 days. So it's interesting to see sometimes how a card can go from 15 to 25 over 3 days.
Yeah, like I know the cadets are going to be going up a lot because I just submitted like a ton of cadet Charlton rookies. So we're going to be seeing the pops on those going up. But it'll be interesting, just because when somebody does submit a ton of them, that can affect we might see that all of a sudden, instead of there being 50 10s, there could be 75 10s in a couple months. And it's like, especially just because of that August boom, like everybody submitted stuff, and all those people haven't gotten their stuff back yet from August. So like if they did the value grading or whatever, and so if that's the case, like how many of those are still sitting there not reported yet? And all of a sudden what the prices were in August for a card, because there was only 100 of them graded, and now all of a sudden we see there's 1,500 of them graded, like that kind of changes a little bit. And maybe that's part of the price drop, because there's just so many more out there and everybody that wants one is getting one. But
I don't know. I find it interesting why. I mean, I kind of understand why pop reports are important, but then again, if I take a look at like right now, let's a ridiculous one, but the 2014 Prism Messi has 1,000 PSA 10s. I mean, there has to be a more than 10,000 people wanting a PSA 10
oh, for sure.
of that
But how
coin.
many of them can afford them? Also,
True, true. But then again, if you look at the prices right now compared to in August,
100%.
This should be an if you were willing to spend 3,000 for that one and it's now sitting at 750 or something, then
Yeah.
obviously it's a buy.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to understand the whole population compared to prices. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes it does. But if I
Well,
look at
and
these,
you're never going to be able to. I'm sorry, you're never going to be able to
sure,
know what for certain because we just
sure,
don't know how many people have entered the market. For on the demand side. So yeah,
exactly,
or how many people are willing to pay. They already paid $3,000 for one, and now they see
yeah,
them at 1,000, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to hedge, so I'm going to buy 3 more of them." So now I have 4 of them at a total of $6,000 instead of one at $3,000. Now price
yeah,
per has dropped substantially.
yeah. I mean, again, it comes down to what players do you buy. But I mean, a Messi, Ronaldo. If you're obviously a Euro. Sorry.
That's the answer right there, Messi and Ronaldo.
I mean, isn't it?
It's that simple.
That's it. Now, I mean, if you go for more risky investments like Haaland, Fati, Foden, whatever youngster,
Yep.
then obviously the market is more volatile because all it takes for a player. Right? Have you seen the price of the mega cracks Ansu Fati go down from his injury?
I have not looked it up, so
It
you
has
tell me
gone down like an insane amount
it's
because
gone down.
yeah, it's he's injured. He's not playing. People cannot see him play. They're
What are
panicking.
the prices right now?
Let me look it up. I know it has dropped. But that's the thing. People don't understand the market. They see a player go out with an injury and all of a sudden they're panicking and they're selling their cards.
Yeah, those are people who are short-sighted in their investment slash collecting.
Yeah. So the Ansu Fati Mega Cracks PSA 10 was selling for 4,300 on the 24th of October.
Okay.
And it's now sitting at close to 3,000 2 days ago.
So 50% drop or 33% drop from the high price almost.
Yeah, about $1,300 less than 2 months ago, and I think he's been injured for about that time. I would say,
Yeah.
something like that. I'm not really sure exactly when he went out with an
And that happens
injury.
in every single area of collecting. And
Yeah,
it's the
and
opposite. That's when you buy, that's not when you sell.
yeah, and it's funny because he only has a PSA 10 pop report of 36,
Oh wow, that's really low.
and he has a gem rate of 11%.
Yeah, those
It's
mega
still
crabs typically have a low 10,
it's still very expensive for an 18-year-old. I mean,
I agree.
$3,000 for a
Yeah.
18-year-old. That's, I mean, how many very good long-term vintage investments can you make with $3,000?
Like I'd rather put that into something else, but the answer to that. Like you could literally buy two PSA 9 Mundichromos Messi's for that.
Yep, and people
Like
are
the last
spending that on a Fati.
Mundicromo PSA 9 went for like $1,600.
Yeah, so I
Like
mean, there's
so
your
how much
answer.
room is there for growth there? I mean, like he literally has to become, I don't know, Mbappe for that to be worth it, in my opinion. Because there's just gonna be more and more of those getting graded. It's not like these stopped
Yeah,
here. Like his cards just came out, so
Yeah, the Mega Cracks Ansu Fati PSA 10, early November, they had 24. Population report was 24 on PSA 10s, and it's now sitting at 36.
okay.
So it's gone up by 12 PSA 10s in the span of like a month and 5 days.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is what is it, like 10-15%? But it's still only 36.
Yeah,
So
it's not a lot actual number, right?
36 people in the world have a PSA 10. Or maybe one person has 5 of them. I don't know, but there's only 36 out there.
Right.
But yeah, as you said, what does he have to do to maintain that price? I don't know.
Yeah.
He has to win the Euros, I think.
Yeah.
If Spain doesn't win the Euros, that price is gonna drop.
Or he keeps scoring at the pace he was scoring at before the injury. Like he was pretty much on fire to start his career.
Yeah, sure, but he wasn't scoring more than Haaland, for example.
Well, no, but he's also 18, so it's a little different. So
2 years difference.
Yeah, that's substantial, right? And this is his first year really playing with the A team, and so
it's like funny.
It'll be fun to watch him. I mean, I love watching these young guys and seeing them. It's exciting to, everybody gets excited about it because it's like, oh, this could be the new next guy. And it could be, but it's unlikely. And so we'll see how it goes. But one last topic, and we don't have to, we can keep it brief if you want to, or however you want to do it. But I know that you deal mainly with modern cards, but do you see yourself ever like moving into vintage, or do you think you're always going to be somebody who maybe focuses more on players that are currently, playing?
A very good question. I think right now for me, it's a thrill because I'm in the sports betting as well. I look a lot of these games. I see a lot of these guys play, so I have a pretty good read on a lot of them, I would say. I have my own opinion, of course, but I try to base them on what I see and the numbers. So right now, for me, the thrill and the experience is just so much bigger with modern players.
Right.
I can see myself moving into vintage if I'm like tired of always having that excitement and that edge and that rush.
Yeah, the sweat. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the same with betting. I mean, I feel like 50 years old. I'm 27, but like the amount of last-minute goals or buzzer beaters or missed field goals that decided my bet in a positive or negative way, it makes you old. So I feel like once I'm kind of, because I already have it in sports betting. Right now, I have it in sports betting and in card collecting and investing. So, especially in investing. So, I feel like once I'm kind of tired of having to worry about prices and market moves and all that stuff, I think I would just go all in on vintage because the market is obviously there. And the most important thing for me is your money is more safe, I would say, in vintage because the people in vintage understand the market a lot better than modern cards.
Yeah.
I also think, and I also believe that people who are more financial stable are in the vintage market, so they don't really worry about their next paycheck. I mean, you're not going out and buy a $5,000 vintage card if you don't have $1,500 in your bank account to pay for the next bill to come in.
Right.
So I feel like if you want more long-term stability, I would definitely go into vintage. But right now, the thrill is for me. It's just to prove myself I'm right.
Sure.
That too. Like watching a player play, because I have these very unpopular opinions about very big players right now, and people always comment on me and give me one. Oh, I can give you 10. I'll give you 2. Pulisic is 1, and Sancho is 2. I can give you 3 more, but Pulisic and Sancho, I think they're just overrated. They're just.
I actually mentioned that on your show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can give you a ton of reasons why, but I mean that's just the way I see it. People may disagree, and then, but that's okay. So for me, it's just too much of a thrill right now to be right and to watch these games and to watch these players play and evolve. So
I mean, it's definitely like more of a wager for sure, and that's actually a really good point as you get older, maybe moving into vintage. I think that's just very much similar to like the investing theory for young people and people at different stages of their lives. Like you get more conservative in your investments as as you age because you want that asset accumulation as a young person, and then you can turn it into like then you start investing in the blue chips later on. You want the exciting tech stocks early on, and so
it's also just a
kind of
journey for me, right? Because I started with $250. That was my starting point. I mean, obviously I have a lot more money, but what's the fun in that? I like building my way up on the grind. So I started with 250. I'm already in four figures, so that's nice. So I'm playing with house money right now. If I invest $500 in Prism and it doesn't work out, I didn't lose anything.
Right.
So it's just, again, understanding what you're willing to risk. Can I sleep at night if I lose €500 or $500? Sure, I've lost multiple €500 in betting as well. So yeah, it comes down to, can you afford to lose it? That's the biggest thing, because I feel like a lot of people spend money they cannot afford to lose, and that's when it goes wrong, and it goes wrong very fast because you think you're doing the right thing. And you're actually not, and you keep spending money because you think you're doing the right thing, and all of a sudden Prism crashes and you're left with nothing.
And that's the thing, like if you're a person who is in that situation, honestly, like buying vintage is probably a smarter move because you know that you're not going to lose it. Like if you're somebody who's putting money into cards that maybe this is your entertainment dollar, and you want to kind of move that money around here and there, you're going to get that slow increase in value over time. And you're not going to be flipping stuff every day. You're not going to be a day trader, but you can be an investor and you can turn that into something, as more and more people get into it. Whereas with the new stuff, you could buy something and it'd be worthless in 2 months. And that's just, a risk you take, but it's a lot more fun. So like, those are
the fun losing.
Because there is that sweat and there's that excitement because you can hit huge as well. And, it's like playing the lottery a little bit more. And that's like when I owned the card shop, that's completely what it was. Like we could keep talking, people would buy boxes of cards. They'd open it in front of you, disappointed when they are done opening the box, and we just look at each other going, man, like he just spent like $400 on this box and didn't get anything. Like he got $150 worth of cards, but it's just that sweat, it's that excitement of like, am I going to hit the big card? Because every so often somebody does, and all of a sudden they get a $3,000 card or something like that, and they're hooked for the next year buying packs because they just got that one. And,
that's why casinos give out free booze, because if you lose, you're happy losing.
Exactly. You feel like you didn't completely lose then. So you get something out of the deal. That was a $500 glass of wine, but
you lose, but you feel good about losing.
It lessens the blow a little bit because you're drunk. But,
exactly.
Well, Vincent, I appreciate you coming on. I'm not really sure. We didn't really get to the vintage market, but I mean, I don't think that. I mean, your focus is mainly on the newer stuff. So, do you have any thoughts on the vintage market? Was there anything that?
I've been kind of watching my Instagram as well, because I had a lot of people buying vintage, and I feel like it's been cooling off a bit, I would say. I'm not sure how you look at it, but I feel like a lot of people are just about buying everything right now. Everything that has some kind of an older feel to it. Like, I don't know. People are just about buying anything right now. That's my observation. And when I when I look around and Instagram and Facebook and Discord channels, it's about a bit of everything. I would say. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think I've noticed like people buying a lot more different items. Like they're figuring out what they like now. And
Yeah.
early on, it was just like, okay, Bill told me or Al told me or excuse me, or somebody else, said this is a good buy, and
Yeah.
it was, but now that's too expensive, or yeah, that doesn't really interest me, because they're a little bit more into it now. And so
Yeah.
there are people that are, like, oh, I like this, like I like these German cards, so I'm going to go this route, or I like these early cards from England because that's where the game started. Everybody just finds what they like, and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. And then, so that's the cool part now. People, I think, are finding themselves a little bit more. They're a little bit more selective in what they are buying,
Yeah.
which is cool. Like, it's fun to see.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of people are just waiting for PSA or BGS cards.
Yeah, there is a huge lull just in the market as a whole. I agree with you. Like, people have a ton of money just sitting somewhere else, and because
Yeah.
everybody blew their wad, it was just like crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy everything in August. Like, let's get it all, because everybody's caught up in this tidal wave of just joy and excitement, and there's this huge rush, and
Yeah.
so everybody's just kind of sitting back. And I've noticed that too. Like, I've noticed that even with my spending. Like, I'm just like, all right, I'm not buying everything right now. I'm gonna pick and choose and buy these specific cards. And if I find like a real great deal, I'll buy it, but I'm not going to buy it if it's going for like market right now because, whatever. So yeah, that's a good call. I think that's very true with a lot of people.
I know plenty of people are waiting for 50, 100, 150, 250 cards from PSA.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting on 16 of them, which is not that much, but I mean, probably the value of those 16 cards will like triple my total portfolio.
Yeah.
So I can spend $1,000, but I mean, if I have 3,000 coming, I would rather wait and invest in a little bit more. So I feel like a lot of people are just doing that, waiting. It's just a waiting game at this point. Like, who gets their cards first? Because the ones who gets them back first can dictate the price on eBay.
Yeah.
Like, if you're lucky enough to get your cards in the next 2 weeks, then you can ask more because the pop reports are lower than the ones that will be in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So the ones who get their cards back first are the lucky ones.
Right, because you have the most people vying for those items. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's not going to be the case. Like, if you get them back in March and there's been 50 of those cards sold already, now your market's dropped by probably 40 of those 50 people. They're not looking to buy more than one of those items. So, yeah, that's a good point. And
you kind of need to hope for the people hyping up your cards.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, right? Maybe by the time you get it back, there's that upswing for the Euros and everything. And, so it's just a matter of timing, and who the heck knows. But it's always nice to get those things back in your possession. So you get to make the decision what to do with them as opposed to, not knowing.
Yeah, I mean, if you have cards right now, you want them back for the Euros, like send them in right now. Because I imagine that during Christmas and because of the boom, a lot of people are going to ask boxes and cards. Yep. What are they going to do in January? Send them in for grading. So right. I think the backlog is going to increase over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks because of Christmas and New Year. So if you want your cards back before the Euros, I mean,
yeah, get them in right now send them out before the holiday, not after.
I mean, yeah, you have to. If you take a 20-day, you have to pay $50 a card. And you're not even like the waiting time is going to be 4, 5, maybe 6 months, and then there's the Euros are in 6 months. So if it's stupid to send in a base Prism card, for example, for a 10-day service because you're gonna pay like $75 or $100.
Yeah,
you're not gonna do that.
No, you only the
takes a year.
Card. Yeah.
So you have to take the 20-day, which is already $50.
Yeah.
I would start sending them in right now.
I did the 10-day, and it took a month for me to get it. Like,
Yeah.
I sent it out on November 10th, and I got them back
Okay.
December 15th.
Right.
Or 14th or something like that. So, and that's
that is insane.
So it's easier for me.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, I can't even imagine the turnaround. Let's not even get going on that again. But
no, true.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Hey, see, you were worried that you weren't going to have the answers to the questions, but look how good you did. You did awesome, brother. Nice job.
Hey, man, I like to be prepared.
Hey, yeah, I like to keep you on your toes, so that's why I didn't give you any questions before this. So
Awesome.
for everybody that's listening or watching, tell them where they can find you. Tell them what they need to know about you. You
can find me basically everywhere, just CardHour. On YouTube, it's CardHour. On Instagram, it's CardHour. On Twitter, it's CardHour. You find me at cardhour.com. It's just CardHour.
Yeah, check out cardhour.com. It's a good place to kind of see what Vincent's working on and what he'll be putting together over time. That's a process, so don't expect it to be shiny and new in 2 days. This is going to be a project that takes some time, but it's fun to just go through and click the links that he's set up already, and see what's early cards or rookies of some of these players and that sort of thing, and good point of reference. So check that out. And thanks again, Vincent. Appreciate you coming on. I know it's a little later there for you than it is for me.
It's okay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, brother. And thanks everybody for coming in and checking it out, and we'll talk to you next time.